Well, welcome to the channel. Greetings to all the new subscribers. I've picked up something like 1,200 subscribers in the last couple of weeks, the majority of which I believe have come over from Steve Summers's channel, which is great. Steve and I have been exchanging messages for a couple of years since he first started looking at his shaper, that big ass Cincinnati one that he's got. Anyway, welcome to the channel. Hope you enjoy what we're doing. There is still time to get your name in the hat for the competition to win the straight edge, and I'll be looking at doing the draw of that at the end of July, with a view to getting it out in the post 1st of August. So go back, have a look at the videos, answer the 3 really tricky questions, and then make the channel donation. Any funds that we have left over after basically covering the cost of the shipping go back into the project for developing the straight edges, and the next part of the project on that is to look at some kind of internal heat treatment on them to reduce the costs involved. So yeah, thanks very much, see you in a bit. Well, we're having a bit of a clear out. Got the cross slide now functioning backwards and forwards and the quick release. So I'm having a dig about, find out all the pieces. I've also fitted the quadrant gear, and then in the process of basically seeing how that meshes and runs when there's power on through the headstock. One of the problems which I had when I was initially putting the headstock together was one of the gear selectors sticks in one gear, and wouldn't you know, that's the one I put it in. So I've got basically a stuck gear selector. What I was aiming on doing was basically getting the quadrant set up, getting the drive set up, commissioning the feed gearbox. I can't do that until I've sorted out this headstock. So I've cleared around. I'm going to take the headstock cover off again and see if I can bottom out why this thing's sticking. I think it's just a case of everything's a little bit snug and tight. At some stage somebody's made up some new parts and fitted them, and like a lot of the other bits that have been added, not done a great job. Anyway, I shall bring you down and show you where we're at. So this is looking down the back of the drive between the rear of the spindle, which is here, out through a feed box which gives us the drives from the output of the spindle down, and then in through a single clutch reverse mechanism down there, which brings that in. And that, I'm pretty sure, is very similar to those on a Hendy lathe. So that's the thin gear, which is we've had a spare made up for. That's the new gear. So they're at 60 in, 60 tooth, and it feeds a 60 tooth. So there's no changing gear in there, but in the event I want to run metric gears, I'd have to get a compound gear in here, which would be, I can't remember which way around, but 100 tooth and a 127 tooth. So yeah, I've had a couple of issues, one of which was trying to get my head around how the hell it all functions, never having run the lathe or run a lathe with all these controls. It's been a challenge. So I had the thing, so I've basically got it running, and I can get drive down to the front of the gear, to this main feeds gearbox, which I'll bring you back and show you. So we've had the drive running through these, which I basically wanted to get to that stage before I put the frontage on it and the gear selectors on it, just to say that yes, I've got drive to it. I can engage and disengage and put it in forward and reverse from the saddle, and that all works now. Although I'll show you one of the issues I've got, which I'm annoyed about, because it's something I actually checked when I was putting it together and went, yeah, that's all right, and it's not. Clearly there's a worn part. So my problem, as I say, is on the gear selection on the headstock, this end selector shifts a leverage mechanism which moves a gear cluster from over here backwards and forwards, and when it's in this position it just gets stuck, whereas the others are all fine. It's just in that one position. So I am going to basically, the power's off, I'm going to lift off the headstock, find out what the hell's the issue. Well, I know what the issue is. It's a case of working out how to resolve it, because I don't want to be running it where I have to wrestle the thing around. It doesn't seem to make any difference whether the motor's running. You can't change the gears when it's in gear or when it's driven. So I want to try and bottom it out. So this selector lever is used for putting it into forward and reverse, but that's the slack. There's a little key on it that sits in this keyway, and it should, I think it should be a hell of a lot tighter fit than that. Annoyingly, to get at it, I've got to take the frigging end off the lathe to slide it out, so all that bracket has to come off again. Anyway, fortunately the clown who fitted the brackets managed to put them in with dowels which have got threaded holes on the back, so I can pull them back out again. But yeah, I'm gonna get back to that. My first job is get the headstock sorted out. For those paying attention, you'll notice that we've no longer got the test bar in. I've took that out now. I've took the paraphernalia for checking the alignment, because we've done that, it's good. There's nothing that we're going to do now which is going to affect that alignment. So yeah, it's almost looking like a lathe. Obviously from this end of it we've got the swivel slide, which is what Holbrook referred to it as, or top slide as most guys, and then we've got to do the tailstock. The tailstock base needs scraping back to the ways, and then we've got to make the adjustments for the height difference to make sure that the alignment of the centre line of the tailstock is in line with the spindle. So yeah, lots to go at still, but let's get this headstock sorted out. So first job is I've loosened off the clamp bolt on the back of the handle, get the clutch brake lever out of the way. There's four fixings, or at least there should be, and they're all bespoke. They're not a standard fixing, and they're all, most of the fittings on this lathe are British standard fine BSF as opposed to BSW, which means you're on quite a fine pitch on everything. Yeah. The spindle is lubricated with quite a light oil. It's about a 32, I think. So it's a sort of a medium thick hydraulic oil viscosity. So I'll put my cup of tea there, and then that's just an oil breather. But the problem is that because of its shape, there's not really a handy grab point. And I don't want my fingers nibbled again. So what we've basically got is a lever here, which is attached to a shaft, which is on same at the end of this. So that position is the same as that position. As the lever is brought round, it moves through a pin and a hole there onto that. That allows the arc that travels through, pivoted here, to reduce and smooth, take the gap up. So that's got to be a nice sliding movement. On the other end of that, and it's around about twice the distance, is the shoe which sits over the gear. If I'm going to go hands free, so excuse the wobble. So that's the shoe which is moving, just that twin gear cluster. That shoe is new, it's not original as far as I can tell. So the problem is that basically that's stuck now. So I'm going to have a fiddle about and see if I can work out what it is and try and avoid dropping anything inside the headstock. So I'm not sure what you're going to be able to see while I'm doing this, but initially I just want to see if anything, which bits are tight and why. I've learnt from experience, take my watch off. It is just that movement along the spline shaft. And then when it gets into this position, the next movement over, the shoe shifts that gear cluster, and then it goes up against, so that's small to large, and then you're on sort of immediate middle of the two speeds. What I can't see, it's only got the two positions it's going to then. Oh no, it's not, it's moving, that gear cluster then gets shoved across. To give you, which is moving the drive onto this setup. There's plenty of oil in there anyway. So I don't know what's doing that. I mean, that's not moving anything other than that cluster. But you can see that spline trying to move around though, can't you? So it's obviously, I think the friction between the sides of this and the gear that it's sitting in means that instead of the surface of the gear scuffing on the inside and not moving, it's trying to drag the gear around, and I think that's the problem. You see how it's indexing round? So I think what we'll do is we'll have this shoe off and just create a little bit more clearance inside, because at the moment it's barely a foul. And this is the only other one with a shoe like that. The other shoe is literally running on a bronze collar with a steel shoe. And there's a bit of clearance on that. So I think that new shoe, when it's been put on, is a little, they've made it a little bit too snug. So having removed the leverage, that slides fine. And it's all right there. So there's either been some kind of twist put onto it, or I don't know. If you look at the, as I say, it's not an original one. It's at some stage it's come into contact with one of the other gears. If you look back through the original or the earlier videos, you'll see where I stripped the headless headstock, and it's full of filings, little tiny bits of brass and bronze, which are basically the only brass and bronze in here is on these two shoes. So whoever replaced it I don't think bothered stripping it out, cleaning it out. Right, I'm going to have a good look and see what I can do with it now. So I've just polished up the leading edges and the trailing edges. Just see whether that makes any difference. And we'll put it back in. This thing's got a little tiny pin on it to stop it rotating when it goes into a keyway. But I can't get at it to rotate it up. It's also sprung. Yep. It's locked again. It's a conundrum, that one. Let's have another look. So where I'm at the moment, I've got the main input gear is in a neutral position. It's between two here, so that shaft will spin, but there's quite a bit of friction on that. Listen to it. And the only thing that's different, I think, that the gear is up against one of the faces there. But with it out of gear, I can heave it across and it will move. But it is really stiff, but it's better than it was. So I'm going to have a look and see which side of the gear is actually in contact, and then take a little bit more out of there, because when I look at, it's gone again. It's not a huge issue, but I don't want to be wrestling to change gears. And if I stick the selectors into a gear there, you have a look. It's not what you call a tight squeeze, so a couple of thou of extra clearance in it shouldn't make a difference. But I definitely think whoever made that up, it was a throw together job and get it out the door, as we found elsewhere. I'll put the headstock cover back on. I've messed about 2 hours with it. It's easier, but it still requires that the main input gear here is in neutral, so the shaft will rotate. I just don't understand why, but it's workable now. That gear, when it's over, gives me the slowest selection, so you're down to sort of 22 RPM, 31, 132. So unless I actually stick it in there by accident, for the limited number of times I'll use it, I think it's workable. I can always revisit it, but I can't see what it is that's stopping it sliding easily. It has to be something is pushing that gear cluster into the spline, and it's just not wanting to go. Maybe it will ease up in time, I don't know. We'll see. It might be that when I've reassembled the gear cluster onto the spline, it's in a slightly different position than it was when it was originally supplied. That's possible. So I'm running it off the inverter that I use for the shaper for the moment. So you fire up the pedestal drive. That is 150 RPM. That should be 600. That should be 445. Yeah. 445 RPM. Now the reason I put it in the low gears was for the feeds and speeds, getting those right. I didn't want it whizzing around at 90 mile an hour. So we try and put it in 31. Bring you around the back to show you the other controls. I'll do my talky bits now because it's a bit loud with the lathe running. So as I understand it, that's the gives you the drives for the feed box, in or out. So it's out. I'll put it over to it, put the speed in. I'll start up the motor. It's in the second slowest gear and it makes a little bit more noise doing that because of the noise from the input gear. All that's controlled off this one lever, forward and reverse, and I'm not convinced with the wear that's on it, it's safe. Yeah. So I think I'm ultimately going to have that handle off and sort out the drive, dog tooth in it. But what I'm going to do is put the fronts on that lot and all the covers on the back, and then at least it's that's another load of stuff off the floor and it keeps the crap out of the area. Yeah. So that's the front of the gearbox. It's been kicking around underneath the lathe since I stripped it and painted it. It's missing its chart which sits there, which I've got to find, and there's a selector knob which I've got to work out how it goes on. Obviously it fits here and that goes there, but I've got to work out whether that selector sits below or above. Now it's fitted with a taper pin because most of this stuff is taper pins, and that only goes in that way round. And that only goes that way round, which would suggest it fits below. So that's the way it's having it. I'll give it a squirt of oil. If I can find my oil cans. It's always the fun bit, getting the holes to line up. So that's the plate. I cleaned it up with a bit of basically salt and a toothbrush. I didn't want it bright and shiny, but it was illegible beforehand. There's some kind of brass alloy. Right, I think that one's drilling and tapping on now. So I've got some little tiny stainless steel. They're 4BA by 1/2 inch. the plaque was originally put on with like a riveted screw, and I have some, but they're a different size. I don't like using little tiny taps like this for obvious reasons. So 1 down, 3 to go. I'll bring you back when I've get it ready to fit. It's a bit of a shoddy paint job, but the rest of it looks alright. Well, that was a wrestling match. That finished me off. 25 minutes of wrestling that one. So that's even dowelled in position. So I've had a look round to see what I'm missing. I'm short of 2 screws, which are 5/16, I think they are. Well, they're an oddball size, and they're not quite 5/8 long, so I'll either make some or find some longer ones and buy them in. Got the keeper plates dug out from underneath the saddle, and I'll get those fitted. And then I found the ways wipes. So these bolt on the end of the saddle like that. I've got 3, and I should be 4, and I've vague recollection that there was only 3 when I got the lathe. Pretty poor state. That's where the wipe sits, and obviously the one that I want is the most important one that gets all the crap put on it. So I've either got to find one, I'll ask on the owners group, see if anybody's got one knocking about, or I've got a fabric hobble one. Be a nice little exercise in making up a pattern for it as a mirror image of that. So obviously it's handed, and then see if I can find somebody that will drop me an aluminium casting.